Yo, what is up guys? It's Pedro here, and in today's video I will be going over 5 running backs that I think the Washington Commanders could target in free agency to add to their running back core to pair with Antonio Gibson to take a little bit of the load off of him because he has dealt with a lot of injuries in his first 2 years. So if you guys are new, make sure to subscribe for Washington and NFL content. I'm so close to 7,000 subscribers, so please help me get there. Also, hit that like button and turn on those notifications so you never miss a video. And go ahead and follow my Twitter. I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers on there. And I also, right after this video, will be on DMV Sports Zone channel, so make sure you guys go ahead and check that out. When people think about the biggest needs for the Washington Commanders this offseason, they, mention quarterback, obviously receiver, middle linebacker, maybe free safety, and some others. And running back is not at the top of the list, but it definitely could be a position they address, especially in terms of depth, adding a second back that can, take some of that workload off of Gibson, act a little bit like an insurance policy if Gibson does go down with an injury for a game or more than a game, because, the first couple years he has dealt with injuries. His rookie year, it was just that turf toe injury for a few weeks, and then in his second year he had that hip injury, he had the shin injury, the shoulder injury, and the he had like a toe injury for a game or so. So he was dealing with all different types of injuries, and who knows, maybe that won't be an issue for the rest of his career, but it definitely looks like at least it'll be a little bit of an issue. So I think they should consider adding another running back in free agency or in the draft. And what they can do, let's say they add a guy in free agency, and then that puts them at Gibson, that guy, hopefully McKissick and Jarrett Patterson. If Jarrett Patterson looks amazing in the offseason, they can be like, okay, we didn't pay this free agent running back that much, we can go ahead and let him go and roll with Gibson and Patterson. But if not, then you have a guy that you can roll with for, to pair with Gibson. And let me just read something from Ben Stanek, who he said, Washington wants free agent J.D. McKissick back. Even if the receiver turned running back returns, there's talk of adding more in the backfield. So they're still interested. Even if they do bring back J.D. McKissick, they likely will try to add another running back. And he said, therefore, don't be surprised if Washington re-signs McKissick and adds another running back capable of spelling or taking over on early downs when Gibson sits. So that is just something right there. So now let's get into the 5 running backs that I think the Washington Commanders could sign this offseason. Okay, so real quick, I'll show you guys some of the free agents available. Melvin Gordon, Sony Michel, Leonard Fournette, James Conner, Rashad Penny. You guys can look all the way down the list. Ronald Jones, Latavius Murray. So there's some decent options available in free agency. So let's go ahead and get started with the first guy. And this one is obvious, but I wanted to include him because I think they should re-sign him, and that is J.D. McKissick. I think it is crucial that the Washington Commanders just sign him this off season, whether it be before free agency or during free agency. I think they should bring back J.D. McKissick. He is a threat as a runner, not a huge threat, but he's okay. He can break some big runs. The last 3 years has averaged over 4 yards a carry. This past season, 48 carries, 212 yards, averaged 4.4 yards per carry, and had 2 touchdowns. But we all know what he adds to this team. The most important aspect of his game is as a receiving back this past season. 397 yards in about 10.5 games and 2 touchdowns. And the year before, close to 600 yards with 2 touchdowns. So he's one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. I would put Christian McCaffrey and Kamara ahead of him when they're healthy, but then I put J.D. McKissick as that next guy. He is that good, and I think they should bring him back because he's not only a great receiving back, he's somewhat of a threat as a runner, and he's good on blitz pickups as well, and he's a great locker room guy. I'm not going to talk too much about J.D. McKissick because we all know everything about him. So we want to bring him, or at least I want to bring him back. And I think it's, both sides want to get a deal done, and it's not going to be super expensive. So I think he will be back. The next guy I think should, Washington Commanders should try to target is running back Ronald Jones from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's more of a big back, but he's kind of taking the back seat to Leonard Fournette. Rookie year didn't really do much, but in 2019 with the Bucs, 172 carries, 724 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, and 6 touchdowns. Then the next year has an even better year, 192 carries, 978 yards, 5.1 yards per carry, and 7 touchdowns. And then this year, again, took a pretty big back seat to Leonard Fournette and had 100 carries, 428 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns, and had 2 fumbles, and he had 64 receiving yards. I like Ronald Jones a lot. You can have him as that same role, kind of that, have him take the back seat a little bit to Gibson, give him like 5 to 10 carries a game. I mean, Ronald Jones really wasn't getting that many carries for the Bucs. He was more playing when Leonard Fournette was out, but I really like him. He's a big, powerful back, which I think would be something that we could use, on those short situations, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Gibson can do it, but you can, take the load off of him a little bit and give those duties to Ronald Jones. I think he's a really good option, and he would be cheap, and it would be a 1-year deal, a prove-it deal. It's not going to be necessarily a long-term thing, but you can have him in the room, and that'll allow J.D. McKissic to focus more on pass catching. You can put him out there, line him up on the line of scrimmage a little bit more. Scott Turner could be a little bit more creative if he has Gibson, Jones, and J.D. McKissic, at least in my opinion. I really like the idea of bringing Ronald Jones in. And again, just because we bring in a free agent running back doesn't mean they're going to be huge impact players. It could be that Jaret Patterson looks, incredible in training camp, and they're like, okay, we're going to move on from this guy. Or, they'll keep 4 running backs and, they'll all get a little bit of work. We'll see about that. But usually it's 3, running backs are active on game days. But I definitely like Ronald Jones. This next guy, Sony Michel, he's another guy that I think Washington should look to add, especially if we can't re-sign J.D. McKissic. I want to re-sign J.D. McKissic, and I know a lot of fans do. But if we can't, Sony Michel would be a good option. Regardless if we do re-sign him or not, I think Sony Michel would be a good option this past season for the Rams. Really didn't start off the season getting that many carries, but as the season went on, Darrell Henderson had some injuries, and then Sony Michel just took over as the lead back, had 208 carries for 845 yards, 4.1 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. But if you watch the playoffs, he didn't get nearly as many carries as he did in those last 4 or 5 games of the season because Cam Akers was back, and I think they want Cam Akers as their lead back. And obviously Sony Michel's a free agent, and they're going to have to pay a lot of guys, and Sony Michel's not going to get a huge deal, but they might not be able to afford signing a running back to a $2, $3, $4 million deal when they can go ahead, draft a guy, and have him for a super low contract. But I like Michel. Like I said, 845 yards this year and 4 touchdowns, and he's also a threat as a receiver as well. 128 yards, 6.1 yards per catch, and a touchdown. But I think he can even be used more than that as a pass catcher. But this is his first year that he's been used a little bit more as a pass catcher, because with the Patriots really wasn't used that much until 2020, and he can do some kick returns as well, but we hopefully will bring back DeAndre Carter, and he will be able to do that. But Sony Michel, definitely another option right here that we could go after. Darrell Williams, he's more of the replacement for J.D. McKissic if he does leave. Sony Michel, I think I would be fine with signing either way, but if we do lose J.D. McKissic, Darrell Williams would be a good option this season. 558 yards, 3.9 yards per carry, so not amazing, but did have 6 touchdowns. But if you look at his, and no fumbles, and if you look at his receiving numbers, 47 catches, 452 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he had 4 catches of over 20 yards. So he's a guy that definitely, I don't think he's as good as J.D. McKissic, but as a receiver at least, but I think he is serviceable and is a solid, probably a top 10 receiving back in the NFL. So I think signing him, he would be cheap, And, maybe the Chiefs will want to bring him back, but they do have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon, so who knows. He's a guy, though, that I would consider, signing. It's not going to be expensive, and, he can be he'll be your J.D. McKissic. I don't see us signing him unless J.D. McKissic does not get re-signed here, but he is definitely a guy that can, be that receiving threat. And if Gibson does go down, he can, take over as that lead back, and he can get, some of those carries. The next guy on this list, he might, I don't know what his situation is going to be this offseason, but Rashad Penny has a ton of potential. You look at his last, let's see, because he took over, he got back healthy in like week 13, really was his first game back actually getting 10 or more carries. That week didn't do much, 35 yards, but then you look at his stretch after that, 137 yards, 39 yards, 135 yards, 170 yards, 190 yards. He just had an insane end of the season stretch, just absolutely insane. And that was, he has a bunch of injury issues, though. That's the big issue. I think he was drafted in the first round of that Darius Geist draft, but Rashad Penny would be a guy that you can give like 10 plus carries a game to, but you don't want to give too many carries to him because obviously he has dealt with a ton of injuries. But you look at his yards per carry, they've been pretty good his whole career, and the Seahawks don't have a great offensive line. 4.9 yards per carry, 5.7, and then 6.3. 2020 was 3.1, but that's a small sample size. That's only 11 carries. So I like Rashad Penny, not too much of a threat as a pass catcher, but still can do some work there. You look at his rookie year, 140 yards receiving, which is more than he had rushing. So he can, that was kick return, 75 yards, receiving in his first year. So not too much of a threat, but if you need him to, he can do it. I saw some, tweet out there that the Seahawks might, franchise tag him. I'm not sure if they'll do that, but he is a guy with loads of potential that if he can stay healthy, he would be a great guy to sign. And he's a guy that you could do like a 2-year deal with, just so that you can, if he does great in his first year, you might be able to trade him and get some value, or just have him as a, contributor on your team. So those are kind of the 5 guys that I think the Washington Commanders could target and should target in free agency. If they do need a running back, they can go the veteran route where they go add guy in free agency, or they could go the draft route where they draft someone in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, because there's so many good running backs in the late rounds. A lot of these top running backs come in the later rounds. You look at just this last year, Elijah Mitchell from the 49ers, he was probably the second best rookie back this year, maybe third. He was like a late round pick. James Robinson the year before, undrafted. So you can get these guys late, very, very cheap. And hey, if they don't work out, you're not committed to them like you would be some of these other guys that you draft earlier. So yeah, that's it for the video. Hope you guys did enjoy the video. Let me know what running backs out of this list you liked. Any running backs that I missed that you would consider signing. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.